Welcome again to the April 2025 edition of Compliance Corner. Thank you so much for investing your time in us. We hope what we have to share with you today, the opinions we have to share with you today, help you think differently about the task in front of you as it relates to compliance, cybersecurity, you name it. Now, this session, it will be centered around really how we think about things related to AI trends, how AI is shaping not just individual markets and not just individual organizations, but also how it's shaping the compliance journeys and strategies of those organizations that are participating in the larger community. But we'll ask things like, how can we stay in front of how AI is changing not only how we govern ourselves, but how we think about really bringing value to the market. And for our audience, I want to introduce guests that we have today that are going to be sharing their incredibly valuable opinions with us. First of all, we have David Hoover, the CISO at Validic. David, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Have Elijah Cox, CEO and President at Snowfly. And last but not least, we have Jason Patterson, Senior, Senior Director of Information Security and Operations at Nasuni. Jason, Elijah, David, again, thank you so much for making space to share your opinion, to share your expertise, honestly, with our audience. Now, those of you that have been regular participants in Compliance Corner know that really the biggest part of our talk center around the Compliance Benchmark Report and data that the community has given us. One of the big points of feedback that we received from the community as it relates to AI specifically is that well over half of respondents to the Compliance Benchmark Report in 2025 felt that AI compliance was not just a concern, but a significant concern for their organizations. And so for our panelists, just to open up dialogue with you, do you have plans to either implement some sort of AI governance or security framework? Have you already done so? What are those conversations inside your businesses looking like today?
I'll go first. So, we're a software company, and so AI, I would say we're late to the game for AI, kind of intentionally. But now, we've fully embraced, what can AI do for code writing? What can AI do to unlock the value of our product, right? We sell storage. How do we help our customers unlock that data? So we've recently established an AI acceptable use policy as our first step. And then we created an AI board with senior leaders across the organization to kind of trickle up hey, I'd like to try this new thing with AI within the organization, but to get some, validation, to make sure it's going to be safe, that it's going to protect your data, that we're not just throwing things against the dartboard, but doing it in a meaningful way, that we can meet compliance objectives, privacy policies, but at the same time, jump on the train of the advancement AI is offering.
Outstanding. And Elijah, it looked like that you had something to add.
So we're kind of in the same situation. We're a software company, and we do automated quality monitoring, which right now AI is taking over. And what we've seen over the last year is that people are so excited to throw their data at AI without any thought or consequence, and it's terrifying. And a lot of people are advertising all this great stuff that they're doing without any responsibility about what's actually happening with the data. So what we've done over the past year is rather than, we're not focusing like what Jason was on the code development, but we've actually helped our clients build a framework on how to normalize, anonymize, sanitize, and verify all of the data that's going into and coming out of the models, so that you can make the decisions that Jason's talking about. And we have not found any great frameworks out there that you can go pay for and get a certification, right? It's just the market's not cut up yet. So that's what we've been spending the last year doing, is actually building all of that framework out for our clients so that they can be confident about how they're using AI in the products they're using.
And Elijah, would it be fair to say that it's a data provenance framework that you've implemented? Is that a bit of a stretch from my end?
It's a little bit of a stretch. I wouldn't call it fully official yet, but we're hoping to get to that official by the end of the year. At this point, it's been learning as we go because things keep changing so quick.
Right. And I think that's a sentiment that's shared by many leaders. David, before I add my opinion, I'd love to hear yours.
Sure. So we are also a software company, but we have the nuance of dealing with healthcare, which comes with all kinds of other regulations. So the question, do we have an AI policy? I would say both yes and no. One of the few compliance frameworks that I've seen using AI is high trust. And because we deal in healthcare, we did have to go through high trust. And I'm sure we'll get into the weeds later, so I won't go too far right now. But basically, we had to write rules immediately around software development. And rather than put it in an AI policy on its own, we added a section into our SDLC policy. So we took that approach. And then on the other side, we are definitely still in the works of, can it be used for marketing or finance, or where else can it be put? And then around that, we're planning, do we need another policy? Do we actually need more app control? So we're still playing with that right now.
And David, that begs so many questions. A question of integration.
Sorry.
No, that's great. Do organizations integrate these new controls, these new requirements, these new ways of being around AI? Do they integrate those into their existing management systems? Obvious question. Before we dig into that, though, Jason, one of the things that you mentioned was creating an AI governance committee. One of the things that I found is that tone from the top, I think, is the old saw. Regardless, the management body's commitment to living and breathing the cultural change that's required to effectively behave in new ways, found that to be so critical. How have you found management really espousing those virtues that they say are important in such a way that your people, the organization itself, can move in the right direction?
It's kind of a sandwich, because we have the people workers, they're like, hey, we want to do things better, faster using AI. And the business leaders are realizing the value in, I read the other day that, you can write 80% of your framework for your code with AI, and then you have the smart people do the 20%. And, that caught business leaders' attention, because we can do more faster and just have the smart people do the nuts and bolts of it. And so it was kind of a weird approach, because often, in companies we're doing a lot of push down, like thou shall do or not do. Yeah. And this AI boom has been every direction coming into it. And that's why it was so important to put some framework and governance around it, because my team, I think in the last year, we've had 100 requests for 100 different tools that could do it. And so we're reviewing privacy policies for every one of them. And finally, we're like, we need to really focus where we're going. What does the end look like? And I think that, Elijah said, we don't know what it's going to be yet, because we don't know where we're going to land. Right. But kind of keeping within the guardrails as we're going down the journey was important to us. Because, we don't do healthcare data, but I emphasize, David, that is scary stuff, and making sure the vendors you're choosing are adhering to your privacy policies, and are they training their LLMs with your data when they shouldn't be, right. So that, the board was a very important key to making sure we're making the right long-term decisions.
I was trying to find a clap emoji thing like they have in the team. I couldn't find it. Jason, well said. Well said. Yeah, and on our perspective, and the sad part on my side is I'm the bad guy most of the time, because my clients know they've got an AI initiative for 2025, and we got to get this in place. And I, as vendor, right, Jason, that's what you mentioned. I, as vendor, have to come in and say, do you realize the type of data you're sharing with what model? Is it private? Is it open source? Is it hosted? Is it public? Where's your data going? And so a lot of times as the vendor, I'm the bad guy, and I say, pump the brakes. You might be able to do some magic, but at what cost and at what compliance issue are you going to run into in 6 months? So it has to come from the top down, but what we've seen in most cases, at the top gets so excited about the magic that they forget about all of the consequences of the magic, sadly.
Mm-hmm. And that was actually one of the first things that we decided, because of the sensitivity of our data. We went pure private. We know it's going to take longer to teach, but we know that our data is staying with us, and we just weren't willing to accept that risk. And speaking from the management perspective, our approach was we had a small internal team of multiple areas kind of create some general rules. And then we just had an all company meeting presented by our executive management saying, hey, here's how we're taking AI.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody wants input, we're still taking input before we sign off on things, except for the software development, of course. So that was our approach, trying to gauge interest, who's using it, who's been playing around with it already, kinds of things.
What I love about what you're saying, David, and you, Elijah, all of you for that matter, as I think about, and this will be my shameless plug for ISO 42001, it is ISO standard for managing AI responsibly through its life cycle. So in it, you create an AI management system. And for those that are familiar with ISO standards, ISO management system standards, we've got common clauses that exist across management system standards, clauses that line up very cleanly with the Deming loop, plan, do, check, act. However, we've got some additional clauses in all ISO management system standards. Not only do we have to determine our context and what's important to our internal and external stakeholders, management has to make a commitment. So this is that top-down commitment, Jason, that you were talking about. Management has to make a commitment, but more importantly, management has to commit. There's an entire clause, an entire section written around management's commitment to supporting the support of this new initiative, supporting financially, supporting through resources, supporting through all those things that we can see fall apart over time with company initiatives when they don't have support. And so I think that's critically important for organizations that are on the same path that you are. Let's approach this responsibly. Let's do this in a meaningful way, but let's also not reinvent the wheel. There's a wheel out there that we can custom fit to us. And so maybe we go that direction. No, David, you talked about healthcare data. That makes me think EPHI. And so as I do think about traditional compliance, generally third-party compliance and regulation for that matter has been focused on data type. With EPHI, we bring HIPAA to bear. With cardholder data, we bring PCI to bear. With sensitive information in general, we might bring other standards or frameworks to bear. Elijah, with you in particular, as you function as a portal, and Jason, for you as well in storage, as you all function as service providers that could potentially ingest any of that data, how do you think about managing your implementation of AI and what feels like an infinite number of variables that can be thrown at you? How do you do that in a way that you're still protecting your customers and your organization?
Do you want to go first, Jason?
Well, I think we're different. So we don't host our customers' data. That is a unique thing for Nasunu. Our software allows them to host their unstructured data in the cloud. And so what we're doing is we're helping them unlock the value within their AWS or GCP or whatever. So we're in a better spot where we're not trying to take this whole big petabytes of data and unlock content. We're walking alongside the customer, helping them do it. And also doing our own business, content. So it's a little bit different than probably what Elijah is seeing, more akin to what David is probably seeing.
Got it.
So sadly, from my point, we've actually had to, I'm not going to say lost, but we've probably had to decline some business because we're not, for compliance reasons, exactly. There's some things we just won't and can't do yet until we can figure out exactly what the market looks like, what the technology looks like, what's available and what's out there. Mm-hmm. So that's really been how we've handled it. Is we have a four-piece, we have 4 parts to our structure, and it has to follow all 4 parts of our structure, which includes data identification, data, not standardization, that's normalization, the data sanitization, then the actual data sharing, and then the data results. And so everything our clients ask us to do, we pass it through all 4 pieces of our framework. And if they don't pass on all 4, we have to say, I'm sorry, no. And a lot of times they'll go to another vendor that's happy to say yes, because it's magic. So
right.
It's a tough question to answer, because you always have to do that trade-off of compliance versus convenience. But what I say, and David mentioned get a compliance policy, get a governance policy in place, and then commit to stick to it, even if it puts you behind. and be behind. It will be way better to be a little bit behind than ahead and falling apart or getting fined because of the data practices.
Yeah. And one thing we had struggled with is you have these, right now your data, usually business data, is very siloed, either business units, business functions. And when you bring it all together, then you have the opportunity to leak it across. One thing that came up was like HR data. If we're using HR system, AI and HR to discuss employee compensation packages, how do we protect that from the general user from writing the right question that leaks the data? Role-based access control works until it doesn't. So considering how to make sure you silo your data enough to prevent leakage. Like, I would not want the board minutes being able to be found by a standard user. So it's thinking those ways through of how to keep the data siloed but meaningful together. This great presenter had this triangle where it was like everything together, but within the triangle, smaller triangles of protected areas of data. So just thinking through the strategy of how to do that up front before you have, a Stack Overflow that all of a sudden dumps everything you want.
Right. And to that end, David, you had mentioned high trust as an external framework that you assess against. As a group, are there external frameworks, external tools that you're currently using to help you make those evaluations and determinations? And David, maybe we start with you, with your experience with high trust.
So we did in the past, but we have since moved away from it just because of the complexity, because the rules it may actually change every day. I feel like it does lately, but it changed so frequently. We were spending more time going into the tool and changing things than we were actually doing the work to see if it affected us. So we were like, okay, just dump the tool. We'll do the research and everything ourselves. And it actually saved us time doing it that way, not using the tool, just because things are changing so quickly. If the software does update, oh yeah, we're going to patch for version 12. The change was 5 days ago and it's already changed again situation. So the tools just could not keep up that we tried.
Are there any other external frameworks that you're considering, at least referencing, as you think about building out structure around AI in the environment?
Strictly right now with high trust, we have broached that ISO 42001, I believe is the correct number. Yeah, we were poking around that, but high trust already integrates with 2 other ISOs. I know 42001 is not one of them, and they're already integrated with NIST. And for right now, that is asking all the questions, and they're asking some questions we can't even think of. So.
And you mentioned a biggie, the NIST AI risk management framework. Jason, A-LIGN, I think this is something that's been on your radars at some point.
Yeah, the NIST component framework, and then also the European stuff, because we're a global provider, so we're looking at what the EU is putting out. To David's point of everything changing, we're still kind of waiting to see, are each state's going to do their own version of this, like we've seen privacy policies like CCPA, or at some point are we going to have kind of a U.S. standard that we have to adhere to? And so it's hard to throw the dart at the board in the right spot. So I don't think a tool is with the rapidly changing environment would be useful right now. So we're just kind of, we've got a couple frameworks we're looking at, and then, at some point, hopefully do the ISO, the 42001 along with our 27001 and 2.
And Elijah, I see you acknowledging.
We're almost in exactly the one thing that we've done that is totally cheating is we've actually used some of our own AI to just to ask it, how could we build a framework and what's out there? And it's literally built into our SOC 2 policies that every month our leadership team goes through and just does what's new in AI compliance, and it's popping up all over. And that's helped us build our framework more than any static or any compliance body that we found yet.
Awesome. And guys, maybe to turn this on its head, Jason, a few minutes ago, you had mentioned third-party risk. I think about, we all play a role in the ecosystem. We consume services from some, we provide services to others. In your ecosystem, for years, SIG-Lights, security questionnaires were a big part of what buyers would use as a gauge to whether or not they could trust a potential provider. We see more and more an uptick in AI questionnaires to parallel old security questionnaires. I don't know if that's a sentiment that you share, or are you saying those things? And then from your organization's perspective, how do you think about whether or not a supplier can be trusted based on how they're using AI?
Yeah, so for us, we kind of do both directions, because as a provider, we get our questionnaires have more questions about AI. How are you going to use our data? Those type of things. And when we're onboarding somebody as a partner, right, we ask them the same questions. If it's something that's going to record conversations for calls, like what is that data being used for?
Yeah.
We don't want you to train your LLM with our customer calls. Guarding our data is just as important as probably our customers asking how we're guarding their data. And we terminated a vendor the other day that we were starting a trial with because they answered their questionnaire perfectly. Everything was great, but we got into the trial with them and we realized that what they wrote and what they were going to do were not exactly aligned.
Oh.
And so it's for security, it's not just a check the box and walk away anymore. It's a check the box and stay involved to make sure that what they say they're doing. And if they deviate, to not be afraid to say, we can't work together anymore, because this data mining is such a big thing now. Because who owns the data is the challenge, and making sure that you own your data and you continue to own it. It's purged when you're done. Those contractual obligations are important.
Yeah.
We're seeing the exact same thing. Oh, I'm sorry, Elijah, go ahead.
No, go ahead, David.
We're seeing the exact same thing. So we call them SIGs, if everybody's familiar with that, but they're 400 or 500 question surveys. But we are starting to get the exact same thing, even with our certifications. They will still say, well, answer these 20 AI questions. I guess not realizing high trust kind of incorporates that now. But yeah, so they're just among the specialized questions that we're being forced to answer, and they're just showing up more and more. Like, do you use AI on our data? How do you use AI on our data? Those kinds of situations.
So the only thing that I would add to what Jason and David said, which was dead on, and that's exactly what we've seen, is we have started requesting and offering a 15-minute demonstration, so that we can actually show our clients and request from our partners. We want to see exactly where the data comes from, the structure flow. So again, a 200 question questionnaire is fantastic, but like you said, Jason, people can answer whatever they want.
Whatever they want.
And we found that instills more confidence, that 15-minute little meeting where, obviously you can curate it and obviously people could still lie in that, but that has made a huge difference in those questionnaires.
And you hit on something really, really important, Jason, when you were talking about kind of this relationship with at time of evaluation. And historically, third-party risk, and I hate to say this, but I feel like it's true. Historically, third-party risk has been very transactional. But we've got a checklist of things as a buyer that I need to ensure are in place. If you can supply something that shows me those things are in place, transaction done, we move forward. What I at least see now is that the market is very, very different, and those relationships are no longer transactional. They are very much relationships, because we are recognizing the interconnectedness of all of us in this ecosystem. And if I'm going to take a risk on you as a provider, I have to really understand what you're doing and how you bring risk to bear in my environment. That is a very, very serious thing. Now, David, you had mentioned the SIGs again. I think one of the ways that we've seen in the past that organizations handle those transactions were through the SIGs. We recognize sometimes those can be faulty. But one of the questions that I have for you guys is, aside from the SIGs in general, do you think that there's an opportunity, and let me frame this in a data point that we had from the compliance benchmark report, 90% of organizations have plans to pursue an AI compliance assessment in some way, shape, or form in the next year. Based on that, and based on what we were just describing, do you see there's an opportunity either for your individual organizations to undergo those assessments, or for a requirement for your suppliers to undergo those assessments to ensure that in the relationship that there is open and honest communication.
I'll go first this time. Me personally, I would want to see what's in there before I force everybody else to go about it and adopt it.
Yes.
Again, we're kind of unique in that, we're already kind of certified with somebody talking about it. So unless this was unique in some way or someone requested it, I'm not sure we would primarily pursue it. But yeah, we would definitely take a look if it's just focused on AI and that will answer all these questions going forth. I definitely think it would be worth the time investment, the ROI, everything.
Yes. Elijah, Jason, I don't know if you have an opinion.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we have SOC 2 Type 2 and ISO 27001, and 2 years ago, that was the standard, right? I could give you those, and we could make a deal. And customers want more and more, and I think that at some point the industry is going to say, the customers are going to demand that we now have an ISO standard certification for the way we're using AI, because it kind of relates to the confidentiality and the criticality of the data, right? Yes. Customers want to know that we're taking it as serious as they are. And I think that we will do that as well downstream with our third party to mitigate that third party risk and say, first, do you have a policy will be the first step. And then as the certification kind of transforms into what we figure out AI is going to be, then requiring them to have an attestation to say they've met this requirement, because it's, we talk about risk management. You brought that up, and how do we control the risk, not just in our own organization, but our third parties and nth parties?
The only thing I would add here is our organization, we've preemptively built out data sanitization and verifications whenever it leaves an environment. So with what Jason and David said, that is exactly the right thing to do. And at this point, there's no other option. And so we've just kind of tried to get ahead of it a little bit and just saying, I'm not going to take the risk. And so if it leaves an environment to go into even a private AI model, it must follow these guidelines, or else the answer is no. And again, it slows things down. It decreases some of the magic, but it is, at this point, there's no other way to promise it, because again, people can say they're doing whatever they're going to say, but it's moving so quickly, it's just hard to verify that that's what's actually happening.
Yeah, and Elijah, to dovetail on that, you speak about moving quickly and you speak about risk. Yeah, I think this is critical. With so much of what we do, it's around identifying and then mitigating risk. It just is what it is. I'm seeing a little bit in the market this confusion between risk related to security concerns versus risk related to governance concerns. Sure. Essentially separating how we think about how we evaluate, direct, and monitor AI through its life cycle versus traditional security concerns. Are the systems safe? Can they be manipulated by bad actors? All those sorts of things. I don't know if this is something that you all are saying as well. I'd love to hear.
So personally, this is actually one of the hardest parts from our perspective, because training, governance, and ethics, how do you measure that, especially in a non-auditable decision-making software? And so really the only way that we found, and man, Jason and David will have the answer to this, so I'm excited to hear what they say. But the thing that we found is that you have to, using that management governance, that's where that importance comes in, is on the back end. So yes, you have to make sure your data is right and it's going to the right places and that they handle the data all correctly. But you also have to have something on the back end to verify that it's not, it sounds weird, but it's not racist and it's not sexist, and that it's not biased, and all of these things. And you can't trust a model to tell you those things. And so your model or your governance policy must have a post data result part of it, so that you have a person dedicated, and it's not just a we hope or we assume or it looks good. There has to be some kind of governance on the post data.
Some sort of validation. And Jason, I see you.
Trust.
Hard. By the way, that is
trust
hard.
But verify. Yeah, trust but verify piece.
Yeah.
So that actually leans into kind of how we handled it with the software development by plugging it directly into our SDLC and not making a separate policy. Automatically, every engineer or developer has to acknowledge they read it. And by plugging it in, we've already got 2 or 3 code reviews before even it's close to production, and it must be different signatures just by our default SDLC. So from my perspective, we just plugged in an app that you can use, just kind of like a library, and then it still has to pass through the chain of everything else. So that was kind of our solution to keeping that piece secure. So yeah, go get all the code you want off of ChatGPT. It's still going to get scanned 3 times before it gets close to production, even though we tell you don't copy paste code, please, but just in case.
How cool.
Yeah.
How,
I
go
think
ahead.
this brings up the shadow IT problem, because you mentioned, David, ChatGPT. If that's something you're using, that's great. But we've recognized that if we don't give people a tool to do what they're trying to do, they'll just go do it. Like every other, every shadow IT problem we've faced, as much as we block it with DNS filtering, we talked in an earlier call that you could open up your phone and do something there to get an answer that you're going to use on your desktop. So you write the policy, do the training, but also empower the people to use the tools we have and to suggest, hey, this is something that we could use to do something better. And have that full feedback loop helps a lot. So it's not just thou shall do this or that, but everybody has kind of the skin in the game that they can improve things and they can make suggestions, but also understand the guardrails that we live in.
Something
Jason,
else that we did. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, David, please.
Because also on the SDLC side, the other thing we plugged into was our application approval process. So like whitelist, blacklist. So we basically went out there and said, hey, if you guys want to use an AI tool we haven't heard of, feel free to request it. We're going to go out there and vet it for you. If for whatever reason we don't like it, here are the ones we've already vetted if it's something you want to play around with. But like you said, they can still go on their phones. They can still circumvent that, off of company computers. But yeah, I mean, I don't know that there's anything you can do at that end.
If you figure out that answer, you'll be a billionaire, and I hope to be part of your startup doing it.
I thought you had the answer, David. I was so excited. I was ready.
I do not, sadly.
Yeah, answer aside,
answer.
I think you're hitting on something really important here, and that is, are we asking the right questions? I mean, to your point, shadow IT, shadow AI is a very real thing today. Yeah. But we see organizations implement really exquisite, really elaborate technical controls to prevent use of AI systems without ever considering that their people will find a way to continue to use the tool. And so we assume that because we have control in place that people are perfectly using that system inside its guardrails, and we discount the fact that people are going to do what people are comfortable doing in many ways. And so I do wonder how much risk we're setting ourselves up only out of our own inability to see the truth. How much risk are we exposing ourselves to by creating these shadow gaps where AI can insert itself? I mean, is this something that your internal security teams are thinking about and working on, or is this still just too big a thing to even try to broach?
Well,
both.
I can go there. Sorry, Jason.
No, you
David
can go.
kind of mentioned it really. I thought quite well. That's what that top-down governance piece does. Is you're never going to be able to solve it. There will always, like you said, there will always be those workarounds. And so the solution is always having, like David mentioned, you build it into a current flow. It needs to be validated in multiple steps, not just one. It needs to be validated in, it needs to be validated out. So again, it's one of those things like, don't kick against the pricks. It's a losing battle if you're going to take it out of your organization. Don't do that. You're going to lose. So just figure out a way to build it into your current flows so that it's building efficiency where it already exists instead of pretending like it's not happening. Like that's irresponsible.
Very much so. And again, guys, I know 42001, it is what it is, but one of the most important things about 42001 and any ISO management system is that it says, we expect management to do all these things, but first and foremost, management must determine its scoping and the context in which it operates. Mm-hmm. Management must clearly articulate, warts and all, who we are, what's important to us, what's important to our internal and external stakeholders, how do we think about potential impacts that might befall those groups, what is our place in the world? And so management has to have a clean view of what's, to the best of their knowledge, really happening, so that any sort of control can be employed. And in situations like this, where we think applying a technical control to a socio-technical problem is going to fix that problem, management systems tell us, well, we need to think differently, and we need to continually reevaluate to ensure that we're actually applying control where it's best used. Are we getting leverage out of what we're implementing into our environments? Which I just think is so refreshing.
Yeah, and I think information technology or information security has always been like the bad guys of no, you can't do this, and really changing the framework to yes with a maybe. We can do this, but we need to do it this way, versus just no, you can't use it, because that's where you see the problems where you say you can't go to this site. Well, the developer will go into an Azure VM where you don't have DNS filtering, and now they're going to do what they want and copy and paste it onto the work computer, right? Engineers are lazy and smart, and they will do it. And so you have to empower them to have a voice at the table, but also make sure that voice makes sense for the organization.
A lot of the questions we ask around AI is when they ask for things like that, and we're like, you can't do that, but what are you trying to accomplish with the AI? I bet we can find a use case for what you want, not the way you're particularly trying to do it and trying to work around it that way. And like you said, lazy and smart. Yeah, they're more than, can you offer me a better solution? They're all ears most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I was a kid, there was a cartoon called Pinky and the Brain. They were two lab rats that were constantly trying to take over the world. And as I do think about just human nature, when something is taken away from us, when we're told we can't do something, I think many of us decide, hey, I'm going to do this my way. What are we going to do tonight, Pinky? Well, we're going to try to take over the world. I do think that there is the spirit of pioneering that many employees feel inside their organizations to use some of these systems. Yes. Yeah. And guys, bringing it back to topic. So we've talked about how you see AI being employed today. We've talked a little bit about some of the frameworks. We talked about the NIST AI risk management framework. David, again, we've talked about high trust and its AI security certification. Are there other AI related frameworks or standards that are currently on your radar today as you think about your internal AI strategy and how your business intends to grow over the next year or so?
I do want to make one quick correction, Patrick. High Trust does not specifically have a separate AI certification. When you go into High Trust, you have the base certification, and then you can pick what I call add-ons or options, HIPAA, GDPR, CCP, all those fun things. AI risk management is just another box. So if you check that box and say, I want to add that to scope, you get all the extra AI questions, how it's integrated, how you're handling AI risk and those things. If you do not select it, you only get like the generic 5 or 10, I want to say, controls around AI. So it is not a separate compliance certification. It's kind of like a tag. For instance, we select HIPAA, obviously, but just because we selected HIPAA doesn't make us HIPAA certified. We're High Trust certified with the HIPAA component. So I just wanted to clarify that's how they have written it out, that you're not AI certified, but you have the High Trust AI component certified.
So it's like a statement of applicability almost.
Yeah, almost. Kind of like if you don't select GDPR, you won't get any EU, UK questions. But if you do select it and you pass, you're not GDPR certified. You're High Trust with GDPR component certified. So yeah, just a difference in depth there. I just wanted to make that clarity.
For our High Trust folks, I think these are called scoping factors that you select and you build out your assessment and my CSI.
Options, add-ons, but they have like 30 different boxes you can check to keep adding controls and costs.
Control and costs, yes. But again, guys, others, are there any others kind of on your roadmap at this point? I know we're not implementing today, but do you have sites to implement?
I think the one that I mentioned was the EU stuff, because the EU is kind of pushing some of their AI mandates, and so we're paying attention to that as well, because the EU always wants to have their own brand of things to fall in line with. So that's the only piece that I think we're also looking at.
Okay.
And we used a lot of the language in there when we put our AI acceptable use policy in place, which I did have an AI bot write the framework for, by the way. It's like, tell me how to govern you. And it said, don't do it.
And you always have to say thank you. When they do take over, they don't come after you. Yes.
I tell my kids that when I talk to the Alexa, I always say please and thank you, because when the robots rise up, they won't come after me.
And Patrick, part of our piece is I don't have anything specific on our roadmap, but that is, we built it into our policy that in our monthly leadership meetings, we research what's new in the world. And then we don't know, right? Whatever the news in the world might change the direction we're going. So it's literally moving so fast. We had to make it monthly instead of annually. And that's actually been really beneficial for us, because we're up in the market. We know what's happening. We know new risks, new competitors, that kind of thing. And I have sounded a little curmudgeon. I love AI, but it is scary, especially when you're dealing with client data. So I hope I didn't come across as too curmudgeon-y, but it's scary.
Well, no, and I'm glad that you said that. I think for most of our listeners, there's this feeling, they call it FUD, fear, uncertainty, doubt. Yeah. I mean, there's a real sense of FUD in the market today about what the right things to do are. I mean, I think we've all seen things that we can do. Yeah, I can swat this fly, but I've got a swarm of flies. So what are the right things to do so that we as an organization can be successful in this new environment that we know is going to evolve quicker than we can keep up with? And that's why I think really taking a strategic viewing through a strategic lens is so important, and actually building some sort of internal system that's extensible to meet the evolving needs. And I almost feel like a chatbot now in this ever-evolving landscape. But no, it becomes critically important, and that's something that only leadership can do. But those people with a sight toward, an objective sight toward what organizations are really hoping to do. ISACA says governance is a value creation process. And they say value creation is really just recognizing desired outcomes at an optimized risk and cost. And so to really set a strategy, to really create value, you have to know what it is you want to create. You have to know how to optimize risk, and therefore how to optimize cost as you're doing so. And that is just so incredibly difficult for people that are already overwhelmed with the day-to-day. I don't know if that's something that you guys feel today. Is it overwhelming to deal with the influx of questions of, again, e-cigs, cig lights, or whatever they are? I mean, is it burdensome and onerous for you today?
For myself,
I mean,
Wait.
David, you go ahead, David.
I was going to say, so for me, not terribly, because we can use, we're ISO as well. We're ISO 27001 as well. So usually once we give those two certifications, we're down to 20 questions anyway. So I'm more than happy to answer 20 questions on that. That's what we're seeing from it. And I do not foresee that going away anytime soon, just because the breadth of questions, depending on who you're talking to, they all have different AI priorities. So they're all asking AI questions, but they're all asking different AI questions. So that's kind of the most frustrating part, is when you see a new one, like, nobody's ever asked that before. Let me go think about that kind of situation. So.
Yeah, I think as it evolves and what we're doing with it, the questions, like you're saying, evolve differently, and customers, that I'm seeing, they don't always have the understanding of what it's going to do, and so then they blast you with a bunch of questions because we don't have the definition of what's going to happen with data, and so then their concern is huge. And what could it do? And so you get 60 questions where maybe if a scoping call had happened earlier, it could have nailed down to 5 or 10 questions to better understand just this box of it.
Yes. Yeah, and as I think about, again, ISO 42001, Clause 7 requires that in providing support that we provide transparent communication. We make it really plain to people internally what's happening with our AI systems, really plain to people externally what's happening with our systems. Yeah, one of the things that's really catching traction, at least from my perspective in the market, for companies to make plain what's happening with their algorithms, with their models, are model cards. I don't know if you guys are currently evaluating model cards or if you've created model cards for the services that you're delivering. I don't know that you're necessarily that link of the chain where this would be something important, but I do wonder what public facing, transparent communication documents you do make available for your customers to maybe ease some of that burden. Is it just assurance documentation, or have you found that there are other ways to tell the story so that you do relieve a little bit of that burden of having to tell it over and over and over again?
I mean, we just have a simple framework document. It's got a questionnaire piece in it for external, and then it's got everything just pre-answered that we know we're going to get asked on the internal. So it's nothing fancy. I mean, it's just our own documentation with some screenshots and data flow pieces. So it's nothing as particularly official at this point. That's what we use.
It's still helpful, Elijah, I'm sure.
It saves so much.
Yeah.
Likewise for us, we have. Oh, go ahead, Jason. You let me go first last time.
Nope, you good.
Okay. Well, I was going to say it's just like Elijah said. We call them white papers for all of our offerings, but we just have technical white papers that answer most of the questions. One interesting thing that I've seen in the past couple of months, in particular, is they're tagging AI onto what I call default questions. For example, backup and disaster recovery. Everybody has to have it. Everybody asks. And now I'm starting to see, are you using AI in conjunction with your disaster recovery kind of situation? And I'm like, oh, and you can't auto answer that question. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Now you're just putting the words AI into a standard question, and I can't auto answer it anymore. So I'm seeing that in the past couple of months.
And I was going to say, as we've been evaluating vendors, especially ones that are big in the AI space, I've been seeing more in their trust centers explicitly talking about what they're going to do with the data and what they're not going to do. And I think that transparency up front is helpful as we're getting the 300 vendors to look at, or these large amount of vendors. The more information we get up front is definitely beneficial. I think I like the idea of the cards you're talking about. This is the use case and how we would use your data and how we would protect your data. All that transparency up front is beneficial.
Absolutely huge. Yes, I agree. Guys, where's it going from here? I mean, your crystal ball, your vertical, your expertise. We've seen a lot of change. I mean, a lot of change really, really quickly. I mean, for you, where is it going? AI, where is it going? And then where are we going as a global community? Do you fundamentally see how you deliver services in the future changing? Do you see things adapting and evolving so that your place in the ecosystem shifts so that you're delivering value a different way? Yeah.
I mean, I see AI unlocking content that was too difficult to get by a person, right? A good use case is, a construction company has a petabyte or 2 petabytes of unstructured data that's been in their management system forever. Like, there's a lot of content in there, but to go through and classify that data and extract value from it, paying somebody $20 an hour doesn't return the investment. But we unleash an AI bot against it who can read it, normalize it, OCR it, do all these things and unlock the data. Like, that is, from my crystal ball, that's where I see AI the best value add for a lot of companies, is using that data to then make business decisions going forward.
I'm going to be fully honest. I have no idea where we're going. I mean, with what Jason said, this year, we just validated a model that can predict when a contact center agent is going to quit. And we can predict with about a 75-80% accuracy what the best intervention is: coaching, raise, promotion, move. I mean, the cost, but I mean, it was miraculous. And so I don't even know what we'll be able to do. And I mean, I have no idea. I honestly, it's one of those roll with the punches and let's find out what next month brings kind of a thing. It's miraculous where this is going.
And I'm in the same boat. There's no way I am going to guess exactly where it's going. I definitely think people are going to continue to find very innovative ways
Yeah.
to utilize it. And that's kind of the approach we're taking right now is let's not plug it into production quite yet, but if you want to play around with it, see what it can do, and then maybe via that you can find the value add. We're all software development, it sounds like companies here. So we kind of all have the same problems, but a different company could have a completely different perspective on what gives them value. Maybe to a bank, finance AI is way more valuable than software development AI. But yeah, no way I'm going to guess where it's going because I think it's only going up. I'm pretty sure about that.
Yeah. So we've talked about positive where it could go, and thank you for being honest. I mean, it is hard to look into that crystal ball. The negative. So one of our comments, one of our questions, and Raymond, thank you first of all for being here. I appreciate you making time to show up today. We'll see in the comments, Raymond has a question that introduces the concept of AI safety. That's essentially how do we protect humanity from significant harms that could befall us. Raymond, what standards can we use beyond the management system standards? Frankly, I don't have a good answer for that. Jason, Elijah, David, if you do, I would welcome it. What I do see, however, is that even through the rollback of recent executive orders, the various AI safety institutes around the world, here in the US, we've got the NIST AI Safety Institute. Those entities, I feel like, are doing some really good things to approach this subject in a really responsible, really mature way. But as far as direct details of what that looks like today, Raymond, I'm sorry, I don't have a good answer. But that does bring up the question for our group. We know the positives, and we see it from a very optimistic lens, how things can change for the better. Are there any things in particular that you all are worried about as it relates to negative impacts on humanity and society?
I'll go first there. So Jason actually mentioned it earlier in this webinar. Is the I don't want to. I mean, engineers are lazy and smart, and so people are going to figure out ways to replace processes and replace effort. And without proper governance and without proper verification of what's actually happening, real damage can be done with data sharing, with data accuracy, all sorts of crazy things. And because it's hard to control the way people are going to use it, and because it's changing so quickly, it's hard to monitor. That for me is the danger. Is you just can't stop the humans from being lazy and smart, and so there's no answer to that. But that's the danger that I see, and that's one of our highest risk conversations that we have every time our leadership team gets together. Is what are our humans going to do?
Right.
And the lack of learned knowledge. Like I know that AI in the universities is a problem today, and even AI in recruiting, right? Because now there's AI bots that will do your coding test for you, and all these things to augment a person's ability. So that makes hiring someone difficult. I've seen recently where people are getting hired as a deep fake video and onboarding with companies to steal data. Like that's a new risk.
Yes.
So there's a dark side to this generative AI piece that we always talk about the business value, but what is the social destruction piece? There's some popular videos from early in the 90s that have a lot of theme to this, that as the dumbing down of people, because this does allow us to be dumber in a lot of ways. Right, we don't have to know how to code the 80% now. We just have to do the 20%. And what's the value loss in that piece? The fundamentals. I remember taking calculus, and I had to learn a very long way to do a calculus problem in Calc 1. And then in Calc 2, they unleashed the real way to do it. But it was important to understand the first step.
The why.
And the why, right? And what if, now I can just type into ChatGPT, write this Python code for me to do whatever I want. But I don't even know why it's doing it, how it's doing it, but it worked. And so now I'm happy and my boss is happy. But what if we lose that? What if we lose the why does it all happen over time? Like, those are things that make me worry. The dumbing down of society.
Yeah, exactly. And I agree with both of you. The only thing I was going to add, my negative is, especially if you're using a public AI model, who knows what that thing has been taught from the internet, because we all know the nature of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we put the people barrier in front of it, is like, yeah, generate all the AI code you like. It's still getting scanned 2 or 3 different ways
Yeah.
on Sunday before it gets there. So yeah, we kind of changed it from, okay, they're going to use it, let them use it. We'll use our back end processes to make sure it's safe, as opposed to, the honor policy or the honor system, so to speak.
Yeah. Yes, I think I read about a year ago they had they were using AI for selecting candidates for a job, and the bot determined that a white male was the only person qualified for the job, because that 97% of the applications came from white males. And so it's like it didn't meaningfully do it, but it uncovered the data behind it and assumed that was what was required. And so, to your point, if we have poorly trained AI models that have biases, right, that's going to skew the outputs. And those are other scary things that could happen, which is why we need validation in front of it, like David said. Writing quality code, it's not just junk code in, junk code out.
Yeah, I think any automation at scale, I'll never forget early in my career, early 2000s, Windows 2000, Active Directory had really just hit the scene, and people were figuring out how you could do really cool things. I thought I would be good at scripting and make some changes to an organizational unit in this domain, and summarily deleted all the objects in the domain without thinking about it. And so really, really quickly, I had affected a significant change to that environment with very little action. And so I really think about automated algorithms in general, and just the potential to do harms if left unattended. Apply that to situation X, and I think there's potential to see negative outcomes. And so I do think, to Raymond's question, AI safety is something that has to remain top of mind. It has to remain forefront for organizations. But, and I forget who mentioned this earlier, so that we can get to that place, a real common understanding, a real shared meaning around the benefits, the value, and also the risks of AI just have to be there. We all kind of have to have this common understanding of what it is and what it isn't. And we're humans, have to remain part of the process. We're human in the loop, still has to be a priority, not just by policy, not just by regulation, but by good practice. And again, to bring this back to ISO 42001, that's something that I see as being incredibly useful in the framework, is that it doesn't tell people what they have to do. They say there are 2 kinds of checklists. There are redo checklists and do confirm checklists. With redo checklists, we lay out a procedure very explicitly so that the user reads it and they do what they're supposed to be doing. No questions, tight guardrails, and really no agency on the part of the user. With do confirm checklists, we at a high level say what needs to be done, and then we expect the user to have the level of expertise to execute on that in the way that makes the most sense to them. And management systems are do confirm checklists. They say you should do this, and then based on the context of your organization, you have an opportunity to do that thing, but it's based on you. It's very contextual and implemented in a way that makes the most sense for your organization and what it is you're trying to create. And so I think the sooner organizations can latch onto this idea, again, that we don't have to recreate the wheel. There's a known good standard out there that we can custom fit to us, that tells us the basic redos that have to happen so that we can be successful and do things responsibly. The sooner we can get there, the sooner I think everyone benefits. Just my opinion. Guys, really, really quickly, we're almost out of time. Thank you to our audience. Thank you. I would be remiss not to tell those viewers that are still with us, our benchmark compliance report is available for download. If you have not read it, please download it and read it. It's absolutely incredible. And it will kind of bring you some insights on perspectives shared by other leaders in your position in the community today. Jason, Elijah, David, thank you so much. Guys, this has been incredible. Yeah, super grateful that you were able to share meaning with our viewers today. And I hope we can have more of this dialogue. Don't feel like we really even scratched the the tip of the iceberg, I guess is the way to put it. I feel like there's so much more to talk about.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Grateful for you all. To our listeners, please stay on just a moment, complete a survey for us. Let us know how we can serve you better. And again, the compliance benchmark report will be incredibly useful for you, no matter what your goal. But for everyone, thank you. Grateful to have spent time with you today. Thanks for investing in us. Bye.